Tonight on The ReidOut.
So this sounds more like a bookkeeping issue than it is of a national security threat, which means it doesn't rise to the level of justifying raiding the former president's home.
I mean, this seems big. And when you look at some of the president's biggest kind of cheerleaders, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Jim Jordan, have gone kind of silent, that tells you all you need to know, too.
As the Justice Department finishes its initial review of the classified documents Trump purloined, the DNI confirms that it's now looking into the potential risks to our national security. Also tonight, Lindsey Graham and the politics of violence. He says if Trump is indicted, Republicans will riot in the streets. Quite a contrast to pivotal moments in history when nonviolence prevailed. Plus, the midterms and why, after Roe, no one with any sense is still talking about a red wave. And as kids head back to school, how to navigate the sometimes confusing guidance out there about COVID and other health threats. But we begin the ReidOut tonight, 3 weeks to the day since Donald Trump announced that the FBI had searched his Mar-a-Lago home to retrieve classified documents he took with him when he left the White House. During that time, the twice impeached former president has continued to try to play the victim, claiming he's under attack by the mean old Biden administration in some sort of political vendetta. But in that same time span, we have learned not only the multiple attempts made by both the National Archives and the DOJ to retrieve all of these documents, but how highly classified some of them were and what they contained. According to Friday's redacted copy of the affidavit, the initial trove of material collected in January included 184 unique documents with classification markings, some marked as top secret. We also learned that some of the documents had markings indicating they could include some of the government's most highly guarded secrets, such as human intelligence sources. That has led the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, to order a damage assessment to determine the risks to national security. And we still don't know what Trump was doing with the documents and who had access to them. For all of his flailing around on his pretend Twitter thing, not once has he explained why those documents were being kept at his not all secure golf resort, like the slippers that you'd nick from a nice hotel. All of this while the former president's legal team struggles to find a defense argument they can stick to for more than a few days. Now, of course, it must be hard when they're being directed by Trump himself. And when, according to the New York Times, people familiar with his thinking say Trump sees Attorney General Merrick Garland not as the federal government's chief law enforcement officer, but merely as a political foe and someone with whom he can haggle about how much anger exists over the situation. Meanwhile, later this week, a U.S. district judge will hold a hearing over Trump's demand for a special master to review the materials seized by the FBI to seek out any privileged material. Judge Eileen Cannon, who was appointed by Trump in 2020, issued a 2-page order this weekend indicating that she is ready to grant his request. The DOJ responded today confirming that they'll comply. But here's the thing. They've already completed their review of the materials, and they're already working on addressing any potential privilege disputes. And let's not forget that in the FBI's search of Mar-a-Lago, they seized even more classified documents, including some that were meant to be read only in special secure government facilities. Joining me now is Naveed Jamali, editor-at-large at Newsweek and a former FBI double agent, and Glenn Kirshner, former federal prosecutor and an MSNBC legal analyst. And Naveed, my friend, I did want to talk to you today because you are in the unique position of having been a double agent, have been someone who relied on the protections afforded to you by the secrecy of what you were doing. And I am very interested to hear what you make of the fact that Donald Trump had all of this classified material, there's all this, including classified material, I should say, at his house, including human intelligence materials.
You know, Joy, maybe I was out that day at spy school, but I'm pretty sure they never told me, hey, Naveed, we're going to protect your identity. But if it does get out, don't worry, we'll bring the Espionage Act to bear. Look, the point about secret intelligence is that it remains secret. Everything that's happening now, from a master to, hell, even the FBI agents that are pulling those documents out of Mar-a-Lago, that puts the intelligence contained within them at risk. You know, there's a social contract that I had with those FBI agents. I went into places that I didn't know that were safe, and they agreed to protect my identity. Once I gave them that information, I had no idea what was going to happen with it. I didn't know who was going to see it. I didn't know what they were going to do with it, but I had a guarantee from them that my name and my identity would be kept safe. Because in espionage, best case scenario is you're compromised. The worst case scenario is pretty darn bad. And there's a lot of worst case scenarios. It just frustrates me. I mean, everything with Trump is a 12. It's hard to feel that, like, when everything's a 12, nothing's a 12. But this, to me, is personal. I mean, this is something that puts people's lives at risk. And just in a best case scenario, Trump was incompetent. But when we've seen Trump, it's rarely the best case scenario.
Yeah, and just to be clear, and this is for my lovely, wonderful director, there have actually been really catastrophic situations for our spies. Back in 2021, the New York Times reported that troubling numbers of informants recruited from other countries to spy for the United States have been captured or killed in recent years. Adversarial intelligence services in countries such as Russia, China, Iran, Pakistan have been hunting down the CIA sources and in some cases turning them into double agents. So again, the risks are real, Naveed. This isn't theoretical.
That's absolutely right. Look, China, North Korea, Iran, Russia, every day they're looking for our spies. There are people here today that are spying for the benefit of the United States of America, and we owe them a minimum duty of protecting their identity. Look, I don't know whether the result of those deaths was because of something Trump did or didn't do. This is a problem, and the point is that you have to do everything in your power to protect that. And the fact that Trump sees this information potentially as something that is beneficial to him as a transaction, not this idea of like higher service or selflessness or just duty to people that are frankly risking their lives and their families' lives for our country. It's just par for course when it comes to Trump.
And Glenn, let me go to you on this, because Donald Trump has tried to make it seem like he's being treated worse than anyone would be treated under the same circumstances. But I think it's fairly obvious that he's been treated much, much better. He was able to hold on to this information that the government desperately wanted back for nearly 2 years, for 18 months. And you pointed out earlier, we do all follow you on the Twitters. You pointed out that there's a woman named Asia Janae Lavello who went to jail. And what she went to prison for was taking classified documents with secret classification to her hotel room and failing to use a secure diplomatic pouch. She went to prison. Trump is golfing. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and Joy, the point is that we should hold folks accountable when, they violate the trust placed in them, particularly as government employees. But the point is, you see when somebody like Miss Lavarello engages in a breach of security that is not 1/1,000,000th as dangerous to the United States as what Donald Trump did, those documents he stole from the federal government and unlawfully concealed at Mar-a-Lago. And let's be clear, we have no idea what he did with them, how he might have exploited them, how he may have compromised our national security. But, there's no dispute that what he did is 1,000,000 times worse than what Miss Lavarello did. And she promptly landed in prison for that, one secret document that she mishandled. And what did our federal government, our executive branch, our Department of Justice do when they learned that Donald Trump had this treasure trove of classified information? They negotiated with him endlessly. They catered to him, begged, pleaded, and implored, please give us the documents back. That is not the way our federal government should handle breaches of our national security.
If you ask, we've had Reality Winner's mom on this show. I highly doubt that there was begging and pleading and asking. She was thrown in prison, and she was trying to help the United States by exposing contacts with Russia and the Trump campaign. David Petraeus, who served this country admirably. Donald Trump, he didn't cry bone spurs. He signed up, right, and served the country. He still got prosecuted for exposing classified data. Glenn, I can't imagine, and can you imagine anyone else other than Donald Trump, maybe because he's a former president or maybe because he's just the luckiest SOB on earth, that could be free from jail and not be in manacles and shackles 18 months after taking that much classified data?
No, and at some point it becomes deeply unjust for example, the foot soldiers of Donald Trump's insurrection that he told to attack the Capitol, stop the certification of Joe Biden's win, fight like hell or you won't have a country anymore. Those folks are being indicted, they're being convicted, and they're being imprisoned. And yet Donald Trump, who orchestrated the attack, has a tea time tomorrow morning, and Miss Lavarello sits in prison. That is a deep injustice that needs to be remedied with charges for Donald Trump and his criminal associates.
Let me play Roy Blunt, because the other thing is the defense of him, the relentless defense by the MAGA Republicans, elected Republicans, who I don't think are serving their constituents very well. This is Senator Roy Blunt. He was on with George Stephanopoulos, dodging and weaving like he was on a soccer field as Stephanopoulos was asking him pretty straightforward, simple questions.
Was he right to take these documents to Mar-a-Lago?
Well, I think we need to know more about the documents.
Was it right for the president to take these government documents, which he's supposed to turn over to the National Archives, down to Mar-a-Lago?
You should be very careful with classified documents. Everybody needs to be more careful.
Do you believe it was right for the president to take those documents to Mar-a-Lago?
I understand he turned over a lot of documents. He should have turned over all of them. I imagine he knows that very well now as well.
Well, he hasn't said that. He said he did nothing wrong.
Naveed, you've been involved in briefing members of Congress. What do you make of a member of Congress who also takes the oath to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic, not being able to simply state that it is wrong, if not illegal, and actually illegal, to steal, essentially, our national secrets and put them in your bedroom?
Look, it's indefensible. The reality, Joy, is that the information, that whatever that information contained, it's already been compromised. It's been compromised by the fact that people who weren't cleared, including the FBI agents, who, by the way, were doing their job, when they go in and retrieve those documents and have to archive it and have to index it, right there, you're putting people that don't have access to need to know stuff to that information. That is a compromise. So the fact that Donald Trump, we can talk about the legal parsing of this at all, but let's talk about the morality of it. Like, you have a duty to protect this country's secrets.